welcome to another episode of Watching People Talk About Traps.
Welcome to another episode of Traps Are Gay.
Or
discussing that feminine penis is very important.
The feminine penis.
all these videos, and none of them answer the most important question of all.
Oh fuck! But anyway, yeah, this is Naretsu the perv here. It's good. It's good. We're going to be watching a good video for once.
Well, a video we tend to agree with.
Yeah.
I haven't
yeah,
watched this, so you know.
Yeah, it's going to be fun because I've watched the whole thing already, and I already pretty much agree with everything Monroe has to say. Also, if you ever see this, hi Monroe, you're awesome.
Can't believe you talked for 30 minutes about fucking cross-dressers on YouTube.
Oh man.
Yeah. Now, Naruto, you're on the pause and
Yep.
go buttons.
Yep. All right, sounds good. All right, so you guys all ready to go?
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
gonna start in 3, 2, 1, go.
This is a video I've been asked to do for a while now. And the thing is, there is a lot of videos on this topic. But unfortunately, I found the vast majority of them to be misleading. That's not even to say they're not well researched. A common trend I find within them, though, is that they lie by omission or contort the context of information to serve their own bias, as well as ignoring actual research done or the reality of situations, though most do have very little research. Now, inevitably, I do understand it's impossible to remove one's bias. That's true of everyone, but it shouldn't blur the facts to serve one's purpose. That is when it becomes a problem, and is often why I show opposition or the actual information within my own videos. My goal here is to give you the history, the facts, the research, and my own conclusion, which I believe to be correct. This is to be completely comprehensive. As I said, I was asked to do this video a lot. So whether you're one of the people who just want a general video on why this word isn't a slur, or if you're tired of people who don't actually know anything about a character saying how they're trans, that'll all be here. No matter what you're tired of people misleading others on this topic, I'm going to be covering it in irrefutable detail.
Hey, this is a good start.
Most know the term originated from 4chan, but always skip a few steps. Originally, the precursor to the term trap was the phrase to drop a Bridget on someone. The reason for this is one of the most prominent characters to fit this archetype early on was Guilty Gear's Bridget.
Well, can you pause for
However,
one
as
sec?
this
I
character
wanted
trope became
to
more
bring the point that he clearly sets out what he wants to do and gives the limitations, his problems with the discussion so far, and basically the reason why he's doing it. So this is, at least in my opinion, far better than. I said last time.
We're a minute 15 in, and the cocksucking has begun.
Well, let's see. You can very much start with your conclusion, and then work your way. Then start at the beginning again, and work your way up to the conclusion. Or, I like this style more of I'm here to present some things and give a conclusion at the end, which basically he already said, but he said I'm giving you the history, the research, etc., and then why I think the logical progression of the video itself.
All right, let's learn about Bridget.
Deductive reasoning as opposed to reductive reasoning, I think is what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
Right, let's learn about Bridget.
The term trap was adopted as a blanket statement to describe feminine anime boys, who you wouldn't expect to be boys. This coincided along with the "it's a trap" meme around the same time. You'd often see posters on 4chan, posting an image of Bridget or another cute feminine boy, before giving the big reveal to the dismay of everyone else in the thread. Due to the juxtaposition of the cute boys and the meme, traps became the term of choice to describe them. As time passed, though, the term evolved as most slang terms tend to do. The term began being popularized due to the popularity of Bailey J, one of the first big trans porn stars, who went by line trap at the time when she was younger. The most prominent example of this that can be seen to this day is old footage from a con, where BJ flashed her chest to a crowd chanting trap. Something typically left out when this clip is being discussed is that when BJ is confronted by staff due to clearly no longer having what one would consider a boy chest from taking hormones, she says, "No, it's okay, I'm a boy," in order to get out of trouble. Something that obviously can lead into this lack of distinction to the public going forward. Around this time, many trans women took this term as a positive, at least in circles such as 4chan. When asking most of these women even now, they will say this, because they take it or took it as a sign of passing, that no one expected them to have male genitalia. During this point in the term's evolution, it was greatly influenced by what the average person observed, when the word was used, who it was used by, and who it is used for. Previously, it was just for boys, but now trans women were using it to describe themselves. And during this point of time, it wasn't such a big deal to many of the trans women on those circles of the internet, because it was
Just
a
so
cool
we
word
pause
they could
again
relate
for
to
one
since it
second.
was associated with
Yeah, of course, this is a lot of history and it's a little bit dry in that there's not much to discuss.
The video is called A History Lesson. So
yeah.
a lot of the beginning, I think the thing is, a lot of the beginning is groundwork, right? Because we have to kind of lay out the history, because we've gone over somewhat similar points to the Pedantic video, because Pedantic also brought up the cosplayer who did the incident with the breast showing and that kind of thing. So I think that it's just, we got to lay the foundations, sort of, so people understand where and it's actually even stronger foundations in Pedantic's video, because in Pedantic's video she completely left out all of the stuff about 4chan, essentially. And went straight into sort of the Japanese, side of things, rather than starting from the original sort of cultural side from the West, and where this sort of term originated from a Western perspective, rather than the Japanese perspective.
Yeah, and
so,
I can't speak to I'm mostly in the fictional area of the trans, but I haven't heard any real people using trans until a few years ago, never in the time when it came up.
I've heard. Well, this is just also being in the U.S. I've heard and used prior to I guess the surge in prevalence and people who were coming forward with gender dysphoria. I heard the phrase trans for years. I think the only more recent thing is kind of the development out of it, like so things like male to female, female to male, like the distinctions of things like that.
Yeah. So let's continue the history lesson.
I do.
Oh, yeah.
Well, no, I just wanted to say one thing, just like as a objective criticism of on screen. If you're going to use footage in the background when you're talking about something, don't use subtitles, because while that may not affect somebody who is like just has this on for background listening, if somebody's actually watching the video, they're going to be instinctively reading the subtitles as opposed to listening to what they're saying.
That's a fair point. A fair point. Yeah, that's a fair criticism. I actually wouldn't have thought of that. I wouldn't even have thought of that. But yeah, that is a good point, because people will be because as we're anime fans that probably watch subs, we're naturally programmed to read the subtitles rather than listen to the voice. So yeah, that's a valid point. But yeah, we'll continue.
And again, made them feel as if they passed just as well as those characters. So one could infer the term even took a more broad meaning due to trans women themselves, not of some negative or bigoted connotation. However, for the average person around this time, things were kind of muddy. I don't think it would be wrong to say back in the early 2000s trans culture wasn't something heavily in the public eye. I myself, being 24 now, don't even think I really understood it until I was around 20. That's not to say it didn't exist, because obviously it did, but it wasn't prevalent knowledge. Most people would be ignorant to the intricacies, and there's nothing wrong with admitting that. So to most people on these boards, and as the term spread, it began to become all-encompassing, for someone who passed for a woman but was born male, no matter the identity. You can even see ripples of this nowadays, not necessarily in a negative context either. One recent example is when a character in Honey Pop was revealed to have a dick by the creator, and in one post he referenced them as trans, not thinking it was a big deal in any way. After the shitstorm promptly started from circles, he clarified that he didn't intend for Polly to be representation. He didn't intend for her to be trans necessarily. He just wanted his character to have a dick, whether it be Fuda, trans, trap, or whatever. He thought they were all the same. He wasn't trying to be malicious by referring to his character as all of these terms at once. He just didn't know. I want to make the point clear now.
Okay, I remember that incident because it's the incident that got me banned off Twitter for 12 hours because I said the T word, the tranny word a few too many times, and I pissed off some Antifa members and they got mad at me. I think my issue with the Honeypop situation was more the fact that I think that Honeydev kind of misunderstood what people were after when people were asking for sort of like the trap aesthetic, right? Because I think it was a combination of the character design being sort of that, I don't know, 60s, 80s ish kind of workout video type design, which I don't actually particularly like, to be honest. I didn't like that design at all. I think that a combination of that plus the, the statement that she has a dick, kind of like it's kind of like it offended both sides at once, right? You had the people that wanted a trap that were more after kind of like probably the idea of the cutesy schoolgirl kind of maybe maid outfit sort of trap kind of aesthetic, rather than and then you had the trans side of the argument, which was sort of like, yeah, they wanted trans representation, but then this felt really like generic and, tropey, which is the point of Honeypop, right? Which was the problem with their argument, was the point of Honeypop is it's meant to be sort of like the characters are supposed to be like these sort of base characteristics. You have the bitchy one, you have the schoolgirl, you have the porn actress, you have like it's the different traits, right?
Yeah,
So
I mean, I get the feeling that Honeydev likes to subvert expectations in all the characters. So when people ask for a trap character, of course a 2000 thing, he goes of course for the 60s instead, just to be a little bit contrarian.
Yeah, and I think that the problem was because he didn't specifically call it a trap, nor did he. I'm not sure if he specifically called it trans either. Initially, I think he's kind of sort of changed his tune a little bit on it now, and he has said that he's going to add the option to allow people to pick whether or not the character has a dick or not, which I think is a perfectly fine compromise. People were mad about that because it's like, oh, you're erasing the trans identity. It's like, no. It's just the way you think about it. No, the way that you think about it is it's post-op or pre-op. That's how, if you're that mad about it, that's how you think about it. But that's the thing, right? Is you're quite right, Lolly. You can't be happy no matter what. And I feel like I just wanted to kind of add a bit more sort of history on top of this on the Honeypop situation, because it was quite a complex issue, and I feel like the root of it was Honeydev just kind of misjudged what people were after, or as Ali pointed out, could have deliberately have tried to be contrarian and it backfired on him.
Yeah, and it was very like that type of Honeypop. For what I know, is either I never played it myself, unfortunately, I never got a chance. But from what I know, it's porn. So like, when you're looking for a serious representation of like that type of subculture, you probably shouldn't be going towards a very kishy kind of pornographic production, as it were.
Yeah, the point is not that the characters are meant to be characters. The point is that the characters are supposed to be fetishes, right? They're not meant. They're not meant to be these deep sort of like it's meant like that's the whole point of it, right? And he said that, right? I'm pretty sure Honeypop has said that on Twitter, is that the characters are not technically meant to be representation because they're just stereotypes, and that's the point, because it's what people want to fap to.
Yeah, you're not going to get the trans equivalent of like Christopher Nolan's Batman out of Honeypop.
Yeah, and I just wanted to kind of add a little bit to that, so we.
Yeah, I was a little bit harsh with contrarian. Maybe he just wanted to be something different than the generic templates.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself. I personally don't like the design, but maybe there's a skin that might appeal to me. But I didn't really like the
personality
really
before
like
looks.
True, that's true. That's true. And of course, there will be skins in the game, so you can always swap it out. But yeah, let's continue.
That ignorance isn't something you should be attacking someone for. You should inform them, if anything. In fact, that's why this video exists, because many of you on the tag are pretty ignorant yourselves. Now, moving on, this is where a lot of these other videos seem to stop in the term's history. But by admitting a term can change, it seems misleading to say it stopped here, or to say that it can't be changed further, perhaps even to what it originally meant, since the general accepted definition had already changed from its original meaning. If you look at the modern context of the word, whether it be on its home 4chan or other places on the internet, a distinction seems to be being made by necessity. The key distinction of the two is typically seen as traps identify as males, who can also pass for female, while trans women are people who want to be a woman, or are a woman. It's no secret that in modern times most trans women don't like this term. While there are cases of some still enjoying it, it's mostly those who grew up in those meme circles, such as 4chan, as mentioned previously. But even then, there's plenty of examples pointable to of people who grew out of this term and now solely use it for boys. On the whole, it usually doesn't fly, understandably, because contextually, it still on some level implies trickery, as well as the person is male. And trans women want to be seen just as women, not that they are tricking someone. Now this is where we currently stand in the term's evolution from my perspective, these two things being distinct from each other. The only counterpoint I've seen to this is that we can't change a term once it has a generally accepted definition, but the same person admitted trap's original use was only that of feminine boys, meaning that the later statement is a contradiction. Words, specifically slang, do tend to change over time. This is actually probably one of the worst videos on this topic because it lies, logic, and continuously contradicts itself. So if you know this...
I wonder who Monroe's talking about, guys.
Well, let's leave the drama for what it is.
Yeah, let's keep going.
Video, do know we will be referencing it later. But my video is titled Why Trap is Not a Slur, so I think we should now move on to the arguments used to say that trap is a slur.
Alright,
now
we've
that
laid...
we're properly familiar with the history.
Hey.
Alright, I'll just pause. We've laid the foundation. We've laid the groundwork. Five minutes into it, well, 6 minutes, pretty much, right? So now we're getting into the arguments.
Yeah, arguments.
These arguments being a big factor and why the distinction has become a necessity for many. The main argument seems to stem from the idea that the word trap leads to the notion that trans women trick men into sex. This argument is usually used in conjunction with the trans panic defense. How people can get away with murder by claiming violent temporary insanity because of unwanted same-sex advances. However, in the two cases where the trans panic defense has been used, the first of which occurred in 2004. In the 2004 case, a transgender teenager had engaged in sex with multiple guys at once, without revealing her biological sex. The second case was in 2013, in which a transgender woman was found beaten to death in Harlem by a man who said he went to a blind fury when he realized she was transgender. During his confession, he said his friends had mocked him for flirting with the woman before he realized she was transgender. It goes without saying that it is horrible what happened to these people, but even if we are to accept trap encompasses trans women, it's not the word that is to blame for these deaths. The argument that people put on the table is that the word trap creates this implication that all trans women are trying to trick men into having sex with them. This isn't true, obviously. In fact, this sort of argument really only seems to be possibly applicable to the first case, as the guys claimed they were tricked, since she didn't reveal she was trans. Which, I also hate to be the guy, but you can't try to sleep with someone if they don't know your gender. If I trick a guy into sleeping with me because I'm a guy and make him think I'm a girl, then he beats me up, that's not the word trap's fault. That is literally lying and manipulation on my part. I'm not saying he's justified in beating me up in that case, but hey, I basically dipped myself in steak sauce and jumped into the lion's den. The only words that led to this situation were the lies I theoretically told. Now, the second case brings up no mention of being tricked at all, and neither instance used the word trap to begin with, actually. The word trap doesn't promote this mindset of transgender women tricking men. What does, and I didn't really know this until researching for this video, that there are these YouTube videos, articles, and other media of trans women touting the fact that they totally tricked a guy into having sex with them. It was apparently even a YouTube trend with its own hashtag, like it's a good thing, a game to be played of manipulating and lying to people. Blair White has a great video herself in more detail, but ultimately it shows that there are actually legitimate contributing factors for why trans women get seen this way. Not because of some meme word from the early 2000s era, but because of bad influences such as this and societal problems.
Yeah,
right.
I always thought it was a very weak argument because even if let's say if we concede the fact that trap has a tricking or a deceiving implication, the word is a meme is draped in meme culture. Those normies who killed somebody, who beat somebody up, wouldn't have possibly known, or so far removed from the culture. I very much doubt that the osmosis, the transmission of feelings and attitudes went from meme culture to those two cases specifically.
What I'm impressed by, okay, I props to the person who unfortunately got beaten to death, but they managed to hide it for that long, and they say multiple, which means that multiple people went through that before they figured out, oh shit, that's a dick.
Yeah, so this was the point that Pedantic got in a hissy fit about. This was the point. So the point that mostly the YouTuber point, and I don't have Pedantic's exact tweet, and I don't know if they actually still have them up. They might have deleted them, but Pedantic was essentially saying, well, clearly it's not Trap that is causing it. It's all of these trans people, and it's like, and Pedantic's argument was that this is victim blaming. So how do you guys feel about that?
Okay, so I just want to point this out there. That is they are 100% right in that you should not be fucking bragging about tricking somebody at any point during sexual intercourse. As we understand it as a society now, what we've all agreed to is that both parties have to have the same contextual understanding for it to not be rape. That's what we've been pushing towards for years. It's why you can't. It's why it's sorry about the dogs.
That's why you can't fuck a dog.
Hey. Anyways, true, but
yeah.
No, it's why you can't just like. Sorry, that's actually.
I think the point we're getting to is about consent, right?
Yeah.
If you consent to having sexual intercourse with someone,
now I know what I was getting at.
Yeah, you theoretically you should have all of the information. It's like if you have consensual sex with someone and they don't reveal to you that they have like a sexual transmitted disease, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not consenting to having a disease carried to you because you don't know, right?
Which happens now, right?
Which happens, right? And so I feel like the idea that it's victim blaming is incredible, like, because the idea is that it's victim blaming because I'm trying to remember what.
Well, let's say it's very, you're victim blaming a group, or is it victim blaming the person who got killed? Because I
think it's victim blaming the person. Like, I think it's within the context of the person persons who got killed because of the idea of the trans panic defense.
But,
right?
The problem was that he pointed to these videos as a cause of distrust. But
yes,
but he's blaming those YouTubers and not the persons who got killed. So
yes,
unless you say that victim blaming the community for this,
I have a strong suspicion, knowing Pedantic, that's what they meant, but I can't confirm because I'm not a mind reader.
No.
I'll let you go. I'll finish this point and then I'll let you go. Like, considering the fact that Pedantic is very collectivist in mindset, I very much assume that when Pedantic is talking about victim blaming, they're talking about the trans community as a whole.
Yeah, I forgot that whole Kaguya-sama with the class struggles.
Well, that was Zarya, not.
Oh, Zarya, sorry, but
yeah, it's different. Yeah. Well, they are in a relationship, so it's kind of like two sides of the same
coin. They can still think differently.
Yeah. Well, I could go on for fucking years about how creepy and dehumanizing Marxist mindset is, but that's not what I was getting at.
But yeah,
what I was getting at is that in Pedantic's defense, we don't know the context in which those men were tricked. They could just be saying that they were tricked because, dead men tell no tales. Or
that's a valid point. That's a valid point.
And sorry, dead trans women tell no tales. But what but what I was getting at earlier is that, okay, so you know how most people these days will consider it at least rapey if you get a woman drunk before you fuck them, right?
Yes.
Why do you think that is?
Because alcohol limits your cognitive knowledge and your perceptions of what's going on around you.
It limits your perceptions and cognitive knowledge. If you're deceiving somebody about it allows you to withhold information or obscure information in order to coerce somebody. If you're withholding or obscuring important information like your biological gender from your sexual partner, I don't see how that's any different from getting a girl drunk and having your way with her. Like, it's basically the same thing. It's the same level of exploitation. It shouldn't be acceptable. And if anything, pedantic should be getting mad at that shit, because that is causing, and especially on a community level, if she's going to go the whole dehumanized Marxist or dehumanizing Marxist route, on a community level, that behavior shouldn't be acceptable, because that creates an aura of paranoia around them, far more than the word trap ever will.
Yeah, I'm unsure if I can find the tweets, but I'm gonna have a look and see if I can find them. In the meantime, yeah, I agree with you there. I think that I like this idea, the trapping idea, right? This idea, like the idea of manipulating someone by not disclosing that information until they either find out in bed or after the fact. I would consider that to be on the same level as getting someone drunk and having a fun time, right? So yeah, I'm trying to find, because I responded to I responded to the pedantic stuff, but I'm trying to find the where is it?
Well, we can listen to the video.
Okay. Oh, hang on. No, I found it. Okay. Do you want me to link you the thread? I'll put it in the voice chat.
All right, I'll just post
there
it
we
up
go.
in editing later. So
yeah, we'll put it up. So pedantic, because it's important, because we're at this point in the video, which pedantic did join into the conversation. So I do think it's good to provide like the alternative like perspective. So pedantic comes in and is like, okay, so all you really need to know about this response to my trap video is that he says, no, trap doesn't contribute to the idea that trans people are tricking men. Actually, it's these clickbait videos from them made. It's these clickbait videos, a few of them made, that gave that reputation. Alright, it's our fault, gotcha. Now, something to note, we're only 8 minutes and 10 minutes into a 35-minute video, right? And this is 1 point from this video. So, it brings into question whether or not our boy pedantic here even actually, watched the video. And then, of course, Monroe comes in and keeps going on, and when the tide started to swift against Romantic's favor, Romantic went on to protect mode on Twitter and ran away with their tail between their legs, and it was quite funny. So yeah, I wanted to put that there just because we're at the point where it's relevant in the video. So if you guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm just reading. There are some replies. Monroe is just stating that it wasn't a point being made. You're just cherry picking. Pedantic says one of the issues you isolated is victim blaming. Monroe says this isn't victim blaming. It is criticizing, basically criticizing the way things are being done.
That is seen. Yeah, sorry about that. It's alright. That is seen okay by many people when it shouldn't be, because it contributes to the false idea to this false idea about trans people. Isn't acting like it's perfectly acceptable more harmful? Pedantic, which was basically the point that I'm pretty sure Lolly just made, and Romantic went protected after that and did not respond. So that is essentially the altercation that happened. Another interesting factoid is I like how pedantic romantic is like frames the video as a response to my trap video, even though the video is not specifically about Pedantic's video, although does reference the video, because Pedantic's video is probably one of the best cases of the opposing argument, I would say. Best case might be a bit too charitable, but it's really the only thing.
It's a popular, I think, a somewhat popular video, so it's perfectly reasonable to do a response or the response to the ideas behind it.
Right. So I wanted to bring that up because it was quite fun. But yeah, so we've gotten past that. So unless there's any more closing thoughts as I pour some more drink, we will continue.
I just want to say, if I could go back in time and tell Shakespeare, look, man, when you're putting these young boys in drag to act like women on stage, you have no idea the shitstorm you're causing. Like 300 years down the line.
Well, Japan did it also, so.
Yeah, your actions have consequences. All right, let's keep going. Let's see. So let's see what the rest of the arguments are.
Which brings me to the problem I always see so close to this argument: toxic masculinity. Now, I don't entirely disagree with this either. My main problem with the concept of this word is really dumb people use it to say that masculinity is toxic, and that's not the reality of it, or the people who solely just blame men for its existence. To me, this phrase is indicative of how our society doesn't let men be seen as fragile, weak, or what we consider gay. A great example of this is the somewhat recent Terry Crews case, where he talks of a Hollywood executive sexually harassing him, and he speaks of how other men called him a pussy for even letting him.
Oh man, that blew my mind.
A personal example from my life is when I was young, I was never able to dress the way I want, which, would be more feminine. Again, this isn't a man thing. My mother was the one so against the person I wanted to be at the time. So I think it's fair to say you can see this as a contributing factor in the second case, since the guy had only attacked the woman after his friends made fun of him for being with someone that they wouldn't consider a woman. Societal issues, not memes. The next part of the argument does have some weight to it, but not in the way most people use it. I'm going to concede here that trap can be used in a derogatory fashion. However, the wording of that is important. It can be used as one. There is a very obvious and clear distinction here within the people doing this, whether referring to anger channers, alt-writers, homophobes, or even David Duke himself.
This is David Duke.
Is that the people they're referring to see trans women as men. They're all saying this word to call them men, in the same way they would call them a sissy, failed male, cross-dresser, or even just a plain term like man. Research shows that trans women are nearly never referred to as traps by those who see them as women. This argument doesn't help prove the point that it's a slur for trans. It helps prove it's a term for guys being used in a derogatory fashion, in the same way just straight up calling them a man would be. Trap can in fact be used derogatory, if you're knowingly saying it to a trans woman. I don't think anyone would argue it can't in a specific instance, but again, that's because you're deliberately using it to call a trans woman a man dressing up. So as you can see, the actual arguments hold very little weight.
Yeah, I mean, you can pause for 1 sec. You can make any word a slur depending on the context. I don't think that trap is a specific, more egregious slur than another.
The issue is that I feel like a lot of these trans activists, they basically want the version of the N-word. It's really all like it really is all it comes down to is they want their word, right? They want their victim word that they can use to beat people with, like a stick. It's kind of like how the N-word is at the moment.
Well, you
right?
you also have tranny, of course. But the problem
the two T words.
Yeah, the problem is, of course, with all these marginalized groups, many of those marginalized people will attempt or take those slurs as a identifier, signifier, and as a mark of pride.
Which is honestly the correct way to do it, because then you completely you depower the word and it no longer becomes an offensive term, right?
Well, of course, there are limits to what you can and can't make into a mark of pride.
I'm talking kind of more on a personal level, right? Like, if you depower the word and you make it no longer affect you, then the word it doesn't affect you, right? Like, it's kind of like with me and the word retard. right? Like it's a word that I've seen so much, and it's a word that I've been called a lot, and it's a word that I don't care about, and I don't let it drive my emotions, and therefore the word doesn't have power. And I feel like the issue is that a lot of these people are allowing these words to have power over them rather than realizing that they can just sort of, depower it themselves on a personal level. And if more people did depower it on a personal level, then that would shift the consensus of what the word is viewed as, right?
Yeah.
So and here's the thing, one less offensive word is better than more offensive words, in my opinion. Even though the offensive word will probably be replaced by another one, right? Because that's usually what happens, is you'll have one offensive word which will get depowered, and then it will get taken over by another word, right? Like, I think the F word and C word and all those are kind of good examples of that. Like, they're no longer considered as egregious as they once were. So I feel like I would. That's why I find this idea really fascinating to me, because these people it seems like they want it to be offensive, right? They don't want, they want to be offended by this word, not the word is inherently offensive.
Well, of course, there's in marginalized groups, you can also see the wider society as a threat or as people coming after you. So when there is an ambiguous word as trap that can be offensive but doesn't have to, you can see it as if you resist against any possible insults.
And I like Monroe's stance here, because it's quite nuanced. It's not 100%. It can never be used as an insult. It's never a slur, right? It's not binary, right? It's not, okay, it's 100% a slur, it's 100% offensive, you can never use it against da 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 da. Or it's 100% it can never be offensive. It's somewhere in the middle. Right?
Well, it's a little bit weak of a conceit concede that trap can be offensive, because any word can be offensive.
That's the thing, though. It's a weak conceit, but it's better than what the opponent is doing, right? In a sense, because the opponent doesn't want to concede anything, right? But on this side of the fence, we've got someone that actually wants to at least have a little bit of give and take, right? Okay, let's work with this, right? Let's see if we can come to some kind of mutual understanding. And I like that. I think that's a much better way of going about things than just having to be solidified within a position.
Yeah, I want to finish one point, that there are limits to what you can take as a mark of pride. For maybe you couldn't. I think you can't make the word slave a positive word to refer to black persons.
Probably not.
Probably not, but we kind of live in the time where these types of words lose their power so quickly from overexposure and overuse. I think it was Tillier that actually talked about this in particular with how many people were just being called alt-right or Nazi. And if you call people Nazi enough, it will stop bothering them, and they might even just use it to refer to themselves and other people. So you kind of fall into this trap where you actually through overuse, begin to lose words that would otherwise describe abhorrent behavior.
So in the attempt to not normalize something, they are in fact normalizing the thing that they hate.
And what is interesting is that at the end of that video, he said, "The next worst thing I can think of from Nazi is pedophile," and God help us the day that word completely loses power. And guess what they're doing now?
God help us look at Twitter and look at these people that are getting mad about drawings and going on about fucking nonsense.
That is exactly what's happening now. It's amazing.
Yeah, I do think there's a slight difference between a political group, let's say trap and slave are not neutral. Well, And I think Nazi is, of course, Nazi and alt-right are labels that carry some ideas with it. Slave does not, and trap doesn't either. So I don't think it is very. I don't think you can compare the two.
Well, in the U.S., slave definitely carries ideas because it almost immediately springs to mind the idea of chattel slavery.
That's an interesting point too in the US, right?
Yeah.
Because that's something that I find quite a lot with the current lolly sort of pedophile debate right now, is that a lot of the people that seem to be throwing pedophile around are talking about things that are fucking legal in a lot of other developed Western nations. 16 is the age of consent in New Zealand right now, right? 16-year-olds can and do have sex quite a lot.
Well, and of course
it's pretty prevalent.
There are
Like it's a culture. Like my point is that it's a cultural thing, right? It's for some reason Americans have this stick up their ass about anything under the age of 18 being pedophilia. Right, and it's very confusing as someone that comes from a culture where people who are like, because in my culture, anything under the age of 16 is considered pedophilia, right?
Well, let me broaden that a little bit, because there are, I don't know the exact laws or limits, but there is something where if one person is 15, another is 16, that's also fine. There's some age difference that you have to meet before.
Yeah, there is a little bit of that. I would have to look into the law a bit more than I have, all right? But I because obviously if you had like a going after a 16-year-old, you're gonna it's gonna raise a couple eyebrows, right? Like it's not gonna, like, the thing is I don't know if that's legal, and I don't think it is, but even if it is legal, it sure as heck would not be considered socially acceptable, right?
Yeah.
It would be shunned to hell and back if somebody got, like, if a 40-year-old got into a relationship with a 16-year-old. It would be absolutely crazy.
Oh no, that's there's this. I think, yeah, until let's say 18. 18, of course, is adult, so you can do whatever you want. But
yeah,
under 18, you have a 16-year-old can date a 18-year-old, and that would be fine. I think that's kind of the limits.
I think there is definitely an age range kind of thing in terms of both legality and in social context, right? And so social and legal, there's definitely probably some kind of age restrictions, but I'm pretty sure the main reason why in New Zealand we have the age of consent at 16 is because teenagers are going to do it anyway, and if they're going to be doing it anyway and they're going to be doing it with each other, we don't want to be criminalizing them for that. Is the problem. And that's why I'm pretty sure we have it set to 6. Like, 16 is the time when you're allowed to do it. 18 is when you can do whatever you want, right? Like, it's kind of like that in a sense. It's like, you can do it. It's not recommended, right? It's not considered to be socially, like, the best.
A smart idea.
Yeah, it's kind of like, the thing with age of consent is that the whole concept is kind of arbitrary to begin with, right? Like it's more there as kind of like a sort of a guideline, right? To be like, look, this is not really, it's not good to have sex with people that are underdeveloped. We need to stop that from happening. So we're gonna have to put an arbitrary number here just to be like, right, okay, because that it's a completely different topic and discussion, but it kind of ties into this idea that, we're getting a bit off track. I'm trying to swerve the track back.
Yeah,
it's too late. You're going to another city.
Yeah, this is probably the FBI is all going to burst down our doors for this discussion.
Yeah.
FBI, open up.
Well, only at Lolly, because you got
a plant the entire time. Anyways, this is probably gonna be cut, but like I just kind of want to like put this like.
Oh no, I don't cut anything.
Oh. Yeah, rip. Once it's said.
Well, shit. Anyways, I had a reputation to protect. Goddamn. Anyways.
Of course, Lolly Dominatrix.
Anyways, I can actually explain the whole concept of why Americans tend to have their stick up their ass in regards to things involving sex, and it's specifically because of who first came here. Protestants first came here during the Puritan movement. That is 100% it, and that is why, especially in the South of Southern Baptists, that is why Southern Baptists at times rival Islam in terms, or Wahhabist Islam in terms of
Prudeness.
Prudeness, yeah. Just go look up any special interest organization in the U.S. tied to Southern Baptists. It is a rabbit hole. I don't know how a group that is descended from another group that broke off of the church because of stagnation could somehow become more stagnant than its host. But well, here we are.
But yeah, I think that I'm trying to think of how we can tie this back to the whole trap debate, right? Like, I think that
people making broad statements.
Yeah. And of course, here's the thing, because and a point to make is that, I mean, you know my Twitter handle, you know I'm on the Discord. If anyone listening to this wants to talk about shit that we say, fucking come and do it. You know, like I'm down for like if. Yeah, send your hate mail to www.lewdgamer.
No, not sponsored by Lewd Gamer.
We're not sponsored by Lewd Gamer. We just use the Discord as a chat.
Well, no, you shouldn't have even said that, because that means that they're enabling us. Jesus.
Shit. Well, it's the fan Discord anyway. It's not actually supposed to be directly. It's more directly connected than it used to be, but it's not super. But it doesn't matter. But like the main thing is it's just broad statements, not good. Let's try and continue, because we've got a lot to get through. So let's continue.
These perceived notions were arbitrarily put together. I mean, when you think about it, factually, it only became a term that encompassed trans women to begin with because of the ones who want to use it. Even starting Reddit communities themselves around the idea, completely run by trans women, until they were told to open it up to all because that's not what the word is for. Like, it seems to me something often overlooked here for the sake of conveniencing one's argument, trap never really had an inherent connection. Some trans women just liked it, and obviously if trans women call themselves that, others are going to adopt it. It feels super disingenuous when people try to put it on the anime community as a whole, blame the alt-right of all things, or whatever their chosen enemy that they have to put this on is. In fact, a lot of the time trap is used wrongly, it isn't even in a rude context. I've seen people use it for trans women in the past just because the trans women they interacted with used it. Ignorance, again, isn't a crime. But that's why we're at this point in history where there is this disconnection. I mentioned earlier most communities make a distinction between traps, males that pass as women, and trans women, women born male. Ironically, I think there is no clearer distinction of this than in the anime community. A lot of these videos inevitably also have this section that tries to say popular traps are actually trans women, and laughably sometimes even supposed to be trans women, but were written poorly. It's usually the most disingenuous fucking I can't curse. It's usually the most disingenuous garbage part of the video, seeking to claim that traps don't actually exist as their own identity, or subgenre, I guess is a better way to put it. Proving to me that these individuals don't actually care about the characters, or the media they're from, just claiming them as their own. They want those characters to just represent them, despite the fact that the fiction written by someone else says otherwise. I would like to point out, you can relate to any character you want. I relate to female characters often, or even some more macho-type guys. But you don't need to claim you share an identity. We're all people, and we can all relate to each other.
Pause for 1 sec.
Creation. Yep.
What character do you relate to? Asking the real questions.
No. Fuck. It's hard. It's actually a hard question because there's just so many. There's so many characters. There's so many characters that you could try and like so many flood into my head. I can't actually fucking draw one.
By default, I would have to say that it would probably be my waifu, but that's also going to get me hate mail for saying that. They're going to think I'm racist. Anyways, by default, I'd have to say my waifu was the one that I relate to the most in fiction.
Who is your waifu?
Lainey O'Hara.
Oh yeah, it's pretty good. I'm not entirely sure. Like, the thing is, if I had a list of characters in front of me, then I'd probably be able to pick, but it's just, I don't know, I'm having a hard time kind of drawing like I'm having a hard time kind of like coming up with something off the top of my head that I relate to in a strong way. Like I can empathize with a lot of characters regardless, right? Like their struggles and their, their stories and that kind of thing. Like I've been watching, I mean, you've been playing, right?
Yeah.
I've been watching Sekiro. Like I can empathize with the characters and the struggles and the story and the world and all that without actually needing to be Japanese or Chinese, right? Or any of that. Like I can, it's pretty good stuff, right? So, yeah.
For antagonist, the antagonist of Pat Labor 2 and probably Sharaz Nabor are two people I tend to like find myself at least somewhat ideologically aligned with.
Let's say
Shard the space Nazi.
Yeah, relate. Well, I like Kyon from Harry as a character, because also the gimmick that he lies to you as he's telling a story. That's always fun when you're being lied to and then being later revealed that you've been lied to. Kaiki from Bakemonogatari.
Alright, let's continue.
One of the most famous examples I've seen of this is the claim that Felix Argyle is a trans woman.
Okay, now, here's some... I want to bring this up because it's another Twitter-related thing. There was someone on Twitter who was making the claim that Monroe here is being disingenuous in their argumentation for Felix. Now, I've not read ReZero, right? So I can't actually claim one way or the other. I will post the tweets in the chat because I feel like it's worth showcasing. Like if someone's making the claim, it's good to put the context in the thing. Now there's a lot of reading there because they actually post the pages from the light novel to try and reinforce their point. However, I am not sure whether or not it's valid or not because I've not read it and I don't plan to read it. So if you have actually read ReZero, then perhaps someone can, provide the other context. But I think what we'll do is before we do that, let's hear Monroe's argument out and then we'll come back to it. Alright? Let's keep going.
Now, the reason for this is a few specific lines in ReZero X Volume 1. In the first example, the narrator says this: "It had been 5 years since Felix, for his own reasons, took on the name Ferris, started dressing in women's clothing, and became Crush's attendant." Now that sounds pretty convincing, right? But what they all leave out is the context of this scene. I own this book. I've read this book. And if you have as well, you know the entire purpose of this scene is to describe why Felix had become feminine and his relationship to Crush. She had to act commanding, unfeminine, forced to process all these masculine traits due to her position. So Felix, in her debt, took on these feminine traits for her. This is a very important part of their dynamic. I'd say it's even the core of it. The author will speak of it frequently through the text or even in interviews. The next scene people use is this. Felix says, "Cute, I am cute, a girlish young woman, a wonderful and cute girl." Again, out of context, that sounds very convincing, I agree. But the setup for the scene is explained as thus. This is what Felix considers an incantation, to stop secondary sex characteristics from taking place, so he can keep his femininity that he borrowed from Crush, and thus his promise to her. You might say, well, that's not enough to convince me, but the dude literally corrects people on his gender constantly, can be quoted as saying he has the body and soul of a man. One of these chapters is called Felix Argyle is a pretty boy. I mean, really, the only time Felix or the text ever goes along and says he's a woman is when purposely tricking someone into believing he is one. This was done in order to avoid an arranged marriage for another character. The payoff is even him lifting his skirt and revealing himself both in physicality and his own words to be a guy. I just fail to see how anyone can misinterpret this without purposely trying to misrepresent or lie about the character. People also try to point to scenes to speak of Felix's femininity, that he's cuter than any boy, or that he has this feminine charm of a woman. But that doesn't mean he's trans. I've had this shit said to me. Femininity does not mean someone's a woman. These characters have a very interesting dynamic.
Right.
I want to point out something with how they describe that character. That was because, and again, I have no context for ReZero, and during the pedantic interview, I was willing to concede that Felix may have, in fact, Felix Ferris, whatever, may in fact have been, transsexual. What is interesting to me, now, putting that aside, what's interesting to me is they focus way, way, way too hard on whether or not it classifies as transsexual when his very actions transcend gender. It is mind-boggling how much they miss the point of their own ideology when they do get that marred down in their labels. Like that's the whole idea behind the transsexual movement, or like the newer movements involving gender identity, isn't that we can just, or isn't necessarily that we're just choosing the label itself. It's that we're rising above those arbitrary definitions, and they miss that so hard it blows my mind. Whatever, go on.
All right, yeah, because I want to get through the end of the Ferris segment and the start of the Astolfo segment, and then in between the two, we'll talk about the whole segment to make it easier.
In history, and of course Felix's relationship to his femininity in general is interesting, but these people don't bother to learn that. This just shows how little they care about the character, to twist and contort his story into something it's not. Yelling at people who dare say otherwise despite being ignorant of the truth themselves. Because why would they care about the truth? They just want something that fits their own narrative. One says, look at the scene, void of any context, and they all share it around and act as if they're right, or know what they're talking about. Perhaps the second most...
Right, okay. Let's go. So, as I said before, I have no actual, I haven't read ReZero, and I don't have the context, right? But the claim, there's two kind of narratives going on. They're trying to use the same evidence to back up their arguments, which is the book itself, right? There's two interpretations. There's the interpretation we just watched, and then there's the interpretation that I posted in the chat of this person trying to make the opposite claim using the same evidence and labeling Monroe's argument as disingenuous. Now, what do people think about this?
Well, I already blew my load earlier.
Yeah, you already blew your load. So what? I think Ali's probably reading.
Yeah, I was reading the tweets. I didn't see anything really interesting in it. Just no, I'm right. No, I'm right. Because of spoilers, I can't go into it very deeply, but I'm right. That's all fine, but I don't think I've seen this before. Even who was the trap character in Steins Gate?
What's the name? I know the one you're talking. I know the one you're
anyway,
talking about, but I don't.
He has the same.
Actually, they do get into that character later in the video.
All right, but anyway, I'm going to use him regardless.
Yeah. Well, you use it now, but just bear in mind that that does get explored later. So what you say might actually get answered in the video.
Yeah, I'm just going to say it's a popular Japanese thing to have male characters be be female, all in everything except their gender. So
it's a trope.
No, it's actually kind of a cultural thing, because especially way back when don't ask me how I know this, I can't actually trace my source of knowledge to this topic, but especially back during times in which the samurai as a clan were a major factor, like a major political factor, boys training were expected to serve female roles for their mentors, sexual female roles for their mentors.
Also,
and that's actually not necessarily Japanese culture. I do believe that the ancient Greeks and I can't remember if it was Spartans or Greeks. It was one of those sort of cultures.
Both. I expect.
Yeah.
Sure.
There was a lot of that kind of shit going on.
I heard it also was in ancient or older Turkey, Middle East.
There's a lot of that kind of become a man by serving the man kind of stuff that was going on. Like, it's kind of like it's the justification for it, right? Like, it's like back then they wouldn't have considered that to be like homosexual or like that kind of because I don't think those concepts probably were a thing, right? To them, it probably would have been seen as pretty fucking normal, right? Like, oh yeah, this is your coming of age, become a man, pass on the fucking
To an
shit.
extent.
That
Yeah,
kind of thing.
but I think a more relevant thing, I think I mentioned it in the last video also, the time where female actors were banned from playing in plays in Japan, and it was I think in the 16th or the 17th century, so that's not that long ago. I mean, we got a lot of culture we still practice today from those times, and maybe not from the ancient times. So
I think an important distinction is that, especially with the Greeks and the Romans, homosexuality was very much more common during wartime because, let's face it, when you're out in the field for years on end and you might die, any hole's a hole. But but within Japan, like these were practices that were more ingrained in the social structure, and they were something that would, again, anybody's free to correct me if I'm wrong. I am going off of like.
Well, I vaguely have a similar that kind of happening with the
I know, and I have a source for the females were banned from theater, so men played all the female roles, and you got famous men, famous for being female.
I actually remember the concept you're talking about, Lolly, from artwork, because when I was researching Japanese woodblock prints as part of my high school art teachings, it was something that actually came up. Was there are woodblock prints depicting that kind of stuff? So I think that's possibly what the source is that there are artistical depictions of older samurai teaching younger samurai and engaging them in somewhat like romantic, like sexual / romantic ways, I guess. So, but yeah, so I don't think that Monroe is being disingenuous. I think that's a bad claim, which is the claim in the tweets, right? I think that the issue right now is we have an issue of interpretation of words and artist intent, and of course, the artist is dead, so we can't really go with like directly what the artist is intending, because of course, like, we have to go off what our interpretations are, which is the problem. So I think that Monroe provides enough context and enough unspoilerific evidence to justify the claim that Astafo is not trans, in the fact that they want, because you have to define what transgenderism is, right? Transgenderism to me is it's somebody who views themselves as the opposite sex and wishes to become the opposite sex, right? And from what the description of Felix I have gotten from both videos and the texts that I have read, they do not see themselves as wanting to become a woman, rather they are trying to fill the role of a woman, which is something completely different.
Which is an interesting cultural thing that I think all of these people tend to ignore for their own gender politics. It might be, as they might say, cultural imperialism for them to just simply ignore this.
So yeah,
aren't you engaging in a form of Orientalism where you excuse excuse Japanese culture because it's Japanese?
Yeah. What is this? All right, Ellie, do you have a final point on this before we move on to my field of expertise?
No. Japan is also, of course, very heavy on the you're either a male or a female, and isn't really into the whole transsexual thing. So I think it fits kind of where you're very much, of course, also strict adherence to the grand call, the grand good of the culture and the society, where you can be whatever you want as long as you're deep inside, on a basic level, still a male or a female.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure in Japan they have a somewhat of of an unspoken rule as long as it doesn't interfere with the the day life, right? And the concept of day life being like the outside perception of you. You can as long as it doesn't interfere with societal expectations or your work obligations, you can pretty much do whatever the fuck you want.
Which is interesting.
Which is my understanding from talking with people and what they've told me, which is of course anecdotal, but that's the idea that I've gotten, is that in Japan, yes, they don't like transgenderism and they don't like homosexuality a lot. Like they allow it, but it's not like it's considered super popular, right? They still allow like gay pride and all that, but it's kind of almost like a don't ask, don't tell kind of mentality, where okay, if you're gay, just do your thing, go to work, do your job, bang some people at night, whatever, right? Like,
well,
that's
of course,
kind of...
there's also the issue that you can't express yourself as being gay whatsoever in wider society.
Yeah, and that's a like, don't get me wrong, that's kind of a problem, but at the same time, it's kind of like I do like the idea of don't ask, don't tell, and the idea that you should just, as long as you still have the freedom to be able to do it, you just don't be obnoxiously, because there's a difference between openly expressing yourself and being obnoxious about it, which is what I feel like a lot of the Western side of things have been doing lately, is they're being obnoxious about it rather than just kind of getting on with this shit.
Well, but it's of course also the advocate groups, not a normal person.
Yeah. Separate the activists from the whole, yeah, definitely.
Here's kind of a distinction though. When I say societal expectations, this includes marriage and extending the family line, which is important.
Yeah.
Especially, you'll notice that with a lot of older, they have fiction going back to the Taisho era and before that involved, younger girls or women engaging and, being, lesbian or whatever. And one of the major plot points would always be that they would inevitably have to marry a man, and it'd be like a tragic separation type of thing. That's related to how attitudes towards homosexuality are over there. It is considered something that is normal, or even like just a normal part of growing up, but they believe that, or they traditionally, I say traditionally because that's changing now, that always does. Traditionally, they believe it's something that you grow out of. So I would say it's not...
Right. No, I agree. Yeah.
Can I raise something as well?
Sure.
Welcome. We're watching a video. If you scroll up the chat, you'll see a link to the watch.
Yeah, well, I do want to mention that, like, from like the history books I actually read about Japan history and stuff, like back in like the olden days, like this is like Heian, Sengoku kind of era. I kind of got the impression that they were very like laissez-faire about it. Essentially, like it's not like they didn't tolerate it or didn't care. They just the kind of just like whatever. And I also know that samurai also had quite a history of homosexuality as well. And there's also
we were talking
about
that
period. There were like these.
Yeah.
I know, like in the Edo period, these cross-dressing boys who were dressed up like kabuki actors, and they would like service female and male clientele.
Yeah, you missed a little bit. We kind of discussed it, but it's also it's nice to have confirmation from the books.
Someone else, yeah. So, yeah, if you click we're watching Monroe's trap video and doing kind of an EFAP style video kind of thing. So if you go up the chat and click the watch together, you can join.
I see. I'm on my iPad right now because like my younger brother is where my computer is, and I don't want to be talking about the stuff that's around.
Right. Yeah, we're at the bit where we're talking about our stuff.
My lad, let me tell you about Feminine Index.
Yeah, well, I kind of feel that like the whole like. It's just like that's kind of like the impression I got. Like I'm not Japanese, so I wouldn't know unless I asked one. But like that was one of the reasons why Christianity was kind of on the down and down, like during like the Edo period, because like they were saying like, oh, homosexuality is sin and you're gonna go to hell, and the it was kind of
a lot of Christians got just A lot of them got, because there was I think during the period where before like when they locked off the country and they had like a period of peace between
not
them and when
completely
America
locked off. They still had trade with China unofficially, and there
Right.
was trade unofficially. But
you get
could
yeah,
not...
but you get what I mean. Like,
Well, I know
Straight
the
up,
history
right.
of this. So basically,
Yeah.
in very short, you got Japanese. They thought they were a little alone, basically, except Korea and China. Then came the European, the Portuguese. The Portuguese came in. They did some trade. All was fine and well, until they spread their religion. The religion's cause of the religion was a revolt. The Japanese were really not happy about Christianity starting a revolt, so Christianity was banned.
Yeah, that's how
Also the fact that
vaguely
like
remembered it. Yeah.
like Tokugawa Ieyasu and sort of his successors were worried about that if these Christian daimyo, you know, swore loyalty to the Pope instead of them, they could basically take over the country because these daimyo would have contested loyalties.
Yeah,
Sounds like a fucking Europa Universalis game and
Man,
fucking
man,
batshit it is.
Japan has the greatest history. It's
Wow.
fucking great.
Oh, there
It's
was-
so
I know,
fun.
because I read about it and I watched this podcast. I was watching this podcast. It's called Samurai Podcast, and they're going over like Obunaga's ambition and sort of like him as a person. And it's
That
just
sounds
like
cool.
the amount of shit, like you could make an entire video, like entire YouTube career, just talking about Obunaga.
that's why there are so
Yeah.
many games and videos and what.
Yeah, the dude's
films.
pretty cool.
And I
Right,
just
so-
to finish up
Okay, so continue with
the
your topic. I'll just jump in when I have something to say.
yeah, sure.
Alright, so
Just to finish up the history, so they were not happy that Christianity started a revolt. They heard of basically the Portuguese and Spanish basically killing the entire continent of South America. So they said, "Fuck you, you're out." And the revolt was happening, and the Dutch came in, and the Japanese said, "We got those Christians; they're annoying. Will you help us?" And the Dutch said, "Sure, we'll shoot some Christians."
God, that sounds like something you'd put on a t-shirt. Sure, we'll shoot some Christian.
In exchange for shooting some Christians, the Dutch were granted exclusivity rights to trade with Japan.
Yeah, and that's when you get like one of the famous foreign-born samurai, that Dutch. I think he was either Dutch or English sailor who worked for like Tokugawa Ieyasu. Because Tokugawa Ieyasu is like, "Oh man, you build boats very well. Well, I'm gonna cuck you and the fucking United." Oh, by the way, I'm gonna write a letter to your wife saying that you actually died, and I'm gonna give you a Japanese name because I actually like you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this was a Englishman on a Dutch ship.
Right.
Yeah, but basically,
man.
like Tokugawa Ieyasu basically like cucked the English government.
Fucking love it. I fucking love fucking Japanese history. So great. But anyway, we're
Yeah,
getting
dude,
into a
if you-
Starfo.
That's ridiculous. Oba Nobunaga, I shit you not, he had a former African slave as a samurai.
Black Samurai.
Yeah, no, he was
No
real,
shit, man. No, I'm not fucking joking, man. This dude actually existed. Like,
and he was
basically,
great.
This Portuguese guy is like,
Yeah.
he's talking to this Portuguese slave trader, and he sees this black guy, and I think it was like his cousin or like a relative of his that saw this black guy, and he tells Obunaga, I was like, "Look, this dude's got like fucking dark skin and stuff," and Obunaga's just like, "Well, that can't be real," and they're like they give this man like a bath or something, and they're trying to see if it's actually real, and they're like, "Oh shit, this is real."
They were in
Let's
all
make him
at
a
his
samurai, fuck
blackness.
it. And he buys him off the Portuguese slave trader. It's like, good news, you're a samurai now. And actually, that dude was at the Battle of Hanoji as well. He was actually there.
See, I want that to be a movie. That needs to be a fucking movie, man. I would be like, no, you make it like the Black Knight, which I keep going on about, right? Like it's like similar kind of concept, right? And you make it like kind of a comedy almost, right? I reckon it'd be fucking amazing. But anyway, time to get into a Starfo time, which is my time. So let's continue the video, and we'll unpause it when we
Yeah.
get to a point we need to talk about.
Talking about Ancient Warriors.
I'll be back in a second.
So, speaking about Ancient Warriors,
Now,
yes.
people will typically point to is the fact that Astolfo sometimes will be ambiguous about his gender. There's plenty of examples of this, from him doing this to player characters in conversation, or even his gender being hidden in some games. However, this does not happen consistently at all. There are plenty of cases of Astolfo's gender being listed as male and him referring to himself as such, way more than the teasing or ambiguity. For example, people always point to the screenshot where Astolfo's gender is listed as it's a secret, while every other source material you can read lists him as male. The point of it being this way in this one specific instance is a visual representation of his personality. His doodles cover this entire page. Even before we dive deeper into who Astolfo is, he's kind of a tease. It makes perfect sense for him to be aloof and to mess with the player. He does it all the time verbally, so of course this is a great way of expressing it here, accompanied by a blushing winky face. This even carries over to Fate Go, as Astolfo wanted his gender hidden in the Hall of Heroes, yet refers to himself as male, uses male pronouns, and corrects people that he is in fact a male. Like, come on, this is classic trap trope cheat. God, that's a tongue twister. Like, come on, this is a classic trap trope of teasing. We've all seen this before. It's the tee-hee, who knows what I could be. Surprise, I'm a boy.
Shout out to my boy Quad X52 for the I fucking love that artist, man. He's so good. But anyway, let's continue.
Say these things exist to tell you that Astolfo doesn't consider himself a male is a gross misunderstanding of who he is. If you're trying to find a deep explanation for all of Astolfo's actions, you're missing the point of his character. Let's talk about that. What makes him this way and who he is, I guess. His feminine way of dressing canonically comes from wanting to do it for Roland, his cousin, which he often mocked for being a pervert.
Copy.
It's actually also heavily implied they slept together. But people theorized he kept dressing this way due to his loss of his sanity. He just pursues whatever is most pleasurable to him, and cute things make him happy. You can see this further iterated in media like Fate Go, which has this to say about him. Astolfo has lost all rationality, so instead of making judgments based off of merits, Astolfo makes all choices based off if it feels good or not. It's pretty clear to me, unless you're going to make the argument that all transgender women are just insane perverted cross-dressers, that there really isn't any indication that Astolfo is trans. Again, it's just a case of cherry-picking things from this character, making it into a narrative you want. What makes this even funnier, and perhaps my point even more clear, Fate does technically have a cute trans character. Fate tends to play with some real aspects of the person the character's based on. In the case of Chevalier Dion, a trans woman who was born intersex. The character is completely considered both male and female within the game Fate Go. For example,
Okay, so here should be
skills
the
that are gender
podcast. I think I've got the link for that podcast I mentioned.
All right. So yeah,
Also,
we'll finish. We'll get to the end of the segment.
Also request Bio Gundam because we can actually hear a baby crying in the background. Not sure if that's somebody you kidnapped or not, but that's not my problem.
Yeah, maybe go on mute or something.
Please switch to at least the push to talk.
Yeah. All right. Oh yeah, he's okay. Let's continue.
Specific affect this character no matter what, and what their actual gender is inconsistent. The point of the character is it's entirely up to the player what they are. Astolfo, however, is always considered a boy by the game. The one exception is when it's on the master. You can use him in female formations because you maybe don't know. This is an excellent use of characterization. It plays exactly off the it's a secret tease he's pulling. Oh, and Blackbeard's Gentleman Love skill, unlike every other female skill in the game, it affects Astolfo. So, I don't know. I'm just gonna chalk it up to the dude getting trapped or being a degenerate. I only recently got into Fate before doing
Degenerate, most likely.
If you wanted actual representation, it was very easy to find. You just had to care about the work, not the fact that, oh, this character's feminine, has a dick. And then stopping.
For a second, so here's that podcast.
But you see these cases all the time. And often these character traits.
Alright. So we're at the end of the Astolfo section. Fucking bang on the money. And kind of what I was getting at with my rant that I had in the last video. Because it's the thing that annoys me the most, is just the fact that there is representation. They just don't actually celebrate it because it's a character that's not actually like popular within the context of the Fate universe. Because Astolfo is just a fucking powerhouse of a character. So yeah, I think that Astolfo is definitely not fucking trans at all. And
if I remember correctly, I think I read this on TV tropes that Astolfo is actually bisexual.
I would believe that, and Monroe does get into that and mentioning that it's implied that he's male cousin or something. Like there's some there is some
if I remember the show, the main character Stig, the homunculus dude, Like if Starter would be fine having sex with him, like
yeah,
that was
and that's mentioned on the wiki too, is that Astolfo doesn't particularly will advance on people regardless of gender. So I like that's the thing. I can believe that, and I wouldn't have a problem with that. Like, there's no issue with that whatsoever. The issue is
also
when people
if you
go,
see like French people in like popular medium, they kind of like trade as kind of androgynous. I think if I'm saying that correctly as well. And
yeah,
there's like the court of love and stuff. So I think it makes perfect sense why Astarte in the Fate universe would be like that.
Is
and I
Astolfo
feel yeah.
French? I thought Charlotte.
It's the what is it based off? It's the Knights of something. I can't fucking remember.
Because I know Astolfo wasn't he a follower of Charlemagne or something? Or no, I'm mixing something up. Ignore me. I don't know shit.
I'm
not really what do you call it? I'm not really an expert on French history, but I know like the court of love is a thing, and like the chevaliers and chivalry, and
Let's
and
have a look and see what the Type Moon wiki has to say, because that'll tell me.
I know he's like some type of knight. I know he was a knight.
Okay, here we go. Wikipedia. Fictional character of the Matter of France, where he was one of Charlemagne's paladins. I was right with Charlemagne.
You were correct. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I don't know much about Faustos or this French history.
Yeah, but the main thing is that sorry, I'm just gonna clear my throat a little bit. The main thing is that Astolfo is not trans, and there is no, like, again, if we're using the definition of trans that I laid out earlier, which I believe is my definition, and I think is the one that makes the most sense, a trans person has to want to become the opposite gender. You cannot have a trans person that wants to remain the gender that they are, because that contradicts the entire point, right? So you have to be able, like, if a character is to be trans, they either have to be androgynous because they are canonically like that, as the character mentioned by Monroe within the Fate universe, which is the other French knight, right? Which in the Fate lore, because I've looked it up, in the Fate lore is androgynous because it's heavily implied that they were born a hermaphrodite. So, like, that's the reason for it, and they were born extremely feminine, and I believe when the character died, like in real life, like in stories, and the character's remains were found, it was found that they had feminine traits within the skeleton. So it's heavily implied that they were either a hermaphrodite or intersex within that respect. So having that character be considered trans, although actually probably incorrect, because they probably are just what even though I don't like the non-binary label, right, they would probably more accurately fit within that label, because they are technically both at the same time.
Intersex is considered its own thing.
Yeah. Well, that's the genetic thing, isn't it? Where it's like you have both.
Well, you have both hormone-producing organs. It doesn't have to be functional or anything.
Functional or anatomically correct. It is.
Again, I would have to. Yeah, it's not a good thing to have. I would have to go and relook up the lore on the character, because I'm not as familiar with this character. I watched a video on it like a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, well, like the Type Moon is just basically taking like the basic idea. It's just like, okay, here's this knight who's kind of effeminate. Let's make him into a trap. All right.
Yeah.
People like traps, don't they? Oh yeah, they do. There's a market for it.
Well, yeah, I'd have to look up what the...
Hey, Blackbird collected treasure. He's gonna collect all the treasure on Comic Cats this year.
I think they're a saber, aren't they? I'm having a look.
Oh, I know.
No,
I found
it.
Clear. Oh no, I'm talking about the other one, the one that Monroe mentioned, the Chalier Demon.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. It's that saber that has like is both male and female.
Yeah, that's the one that we're talking about now. Let me go and...
Oh yeah, I know about that one. Yeah.
Demon Fate. Okay. Yeah, because you want to use the Type Moon wiki when you're looking up character information, not the games wiki. Because the Type Moon wiki is actually much more comprehensive.
Yeah, I've actually found that when I looked this stuff up. Like,
yeah, Chalier Demon, said to be a woman who was a man who was a woman, figure of legend from the 18th to 19th century in France, both a soldier and a writer. The the Chevalier Demon had a prolific career as a spy working for a secret agency that was hunted by great world powers, and who is also a master of fucking word. I can't fucking, what the fuck word is that?
If you actually think about it, like
Plenipotentiary is the word. A person who is especially a diplomat interested in the full power of independent action on belief of their government, technically in a foreign country. Adjective, having power to take immediate action. Okay. While infiltrating the Russian Empire for a secret mission, they socialized with the Empress of Russia, some other word I can't pronounce because it's Russian, leaving behind beauty pass. So yeah, okay. Oh, okay. So having the beauty pass down or something like that. And then appearance. It is said that regardless of dressing formally as a man or behaving as a man, they are imbued with such good looks that they could pass up for a lovely young girl. In fact, before coming to age, they were introduced to high society while wearing a dress and earned themselves a reputation as a beautiful woman. The way. That's
sounds like an
about all of the
incredible
info.
ambiguous character.
That's about all the info I can glean from the wiki, and I'll post it in the chat so it can be used as a source.
like also you have to remember that like even if you were trans, like back in the day, you couldn't have like the surgery, because remember that's just like a relatively
Well, yeah,
recent
because
thing.
that didn't fucking exist back then, right?
Well, technically there was the surgery. They just kill you. They fix the
Yeah.
problem.
There's your surgery right there.
Or you'd be a eunuch.
So if you want your kind of like, if you want your representation, there you go. You don't have to lie about a character to have your trans representation, right? So yeah, I think that it's a very good point, because I actually didn't even know about this character until quite recently, which is one of the great things about Fate, is I'm finding out new shit all the time, and I'm learning a lot about history as well.
Fate is you learn more about history and these legends and stuff, because like when I first watched Fate, I didn't know who Cuchulainn was, and I'm like part Irish, so I looked up Cuchulainn, and I'm like, oh god, this is some Celtic dude from Ireland who's like this badass spear who stabs shit, and he like died, you know, tying himself up to a tree after getting wounded like a boss. It's like, oh, this is cool. It's like, oh, who's his teacher?
Yeah. He like tied himself up to the tree so he wouldn't die lying down or something, I believe was the justification. Like he wanted to die standing up or something.
That's fucking awesome.
It's fucking badass. There's a reason why Whitebeard the Pirate is fucking... this idea of not wanting to die lying down is fucking great. So yeah, I think that Monroe is pretty on point with the Astafo analysis there, and is pretty much on the game. So we're halfway through. Let's keep going, and we'll wait until people want to say stuff.
Traits are important to who that character is. Their story, their journey, what makes that character that character. To say Bridget is trans is to ignore his want to prove himself as a man, despite his appearance. To say Ruka is trans is to ignore the fact that they only wanted to be a woman so Kabi would love them. Their entire arc is about them accepting that they are gay, and they don't need to change. Ruka is Ruka. To say Hidari is trans is to ignore his purpose for being an idol. That's to get as far away as possible from the path set for him by his parents. To say Chihiro is trans ignores his want to be masculine. Like, it's silly. His whole development is about wanting to become manly, and states he only dresses feminine to not be bullied. If you have to cherry pick to make a point, then guess what? You never had a point to begin with.
Another way to think, which is that you start at the conclusion, and you say, I have to find evidence that shows that this is true.
You're not looking for data to try to prove you wrong or refine your position, right? You're trying to look for all the data that proves you right.
You'll cherry pick until you find evidence that appears to be an arrow, a logical arrow to your dogma. If there's not anything that you can say, anything you can show me that could make me believe, oh, I guess I'm wrong. It's not falsifiable anymore. It doesn't make any sense for a scientist to argue with that kind of thinking. There's no point.
Most laughable case I've seen in recent times is calling Luigi trans. I am completely serious on this. It's all because of a joke Nintendo of America put into New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe about the Princess Crown. Of course, this has been a theme of Mario media for a long time. Games, comics, whatever, of Luigi cross-dressing. It's a joke, guys. Is being trans a joke to you? Like, all of this really does is make it look that way. That it's not something to take seriously. Cross-dressing has been a part of humor for, well, a really long time. Are we gonna call Timmy Turner trans because of that one episode he wished to be a girl to Silent Trixie? Like, that is something I can believe someone saying at this point, honestly. And of course, Anna Everything is Trans Valens wrote this article. Which brings me to a greater problem that you probably have caught on to. It's not just traps these people want to erase, it's any form of cross-dressing. The second a dude puts on female clothing, they want to call them a woman, even when it comes to real people like myself. I have to deal with this. I'm not allowed to just do something for fun, or because I like it. And you know, I'm sure there's people on the other side who think I'm gross for doing it, but at least they're honest about being malicious. These people act like they're doing me a favor, act like they're my savior by harassing me and telling me I'm something I'm not. I just like to wear cute shit. It ain't that deep. I also want to note that this happens in a variety of other ways. I think the most notable cases actually have to do with a character being called a trans man. People claiming Samus is trans as well as Nato from Persona 4. In one case, you're delegitimizing the idea that women can be strong, and in the other, you're completely ignoring the entire character's arc. Now, with Samus, you're basically saying, oh, well, this character possesses some masculine traits, so clearly this means she was actually a man at some point. These self-proclaimed progressive types will tell you, oh, women can come in all shapes and sizes. But look, when they actually do, they're claiming to not be a woman. Strong females exist, I'm sure many a guy is happy about them.
Pause about that with regards to Samus, because I used to be a huge dork, still kind of am for Metroid as a science fiction universe, and in particular, I did actually read the manga years back. No, Samus was always a woman. Her masculine traits come from genetic modification that the Chozo gave her. She's basically half Xeno.
Also, she looks like a tomboy.
Also, our pause game is on point.
Yeah.
I fucking love Hughes, by the way.
Yeah.
Love it. Great artist. Great artist. So yeah, I agree. I think, yeah, it's with Samus, it's kind of like, I remember like watching a lot of videos at the time about the reveal of Samus being a woman at the end of the first game, being like this really big revolutionary thing, and it was at the time, right? It was a really big thing. Oh, you find out you're playing a girl the whole time, right? And that's the kind of representation that I love. I think that's great, fantastic. It's just the problem is nowadays we've got these people that they're trying to do that artificially rather than organically. With Samus, it was rather organic because you had this character that was in a spacesuit, and you didn't really need to like the gender didn't really matter at the time. It was just kind of like, oh, they're in a spacesuit, I'm gonna go shoot stuff up. And then if you get a certain ending, or you do really well at the game, you find out, oh, this strong character that I've been playing this entire game is a woman. Ah. That's pretty
next,
cool.
Are you just to add to that? Are you familiar with like Warhammer 40k?
I am quite
Somewhat,
familiar
yeah.
with the lore. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's like the same people. It's like the same argument that people want female space marines, all right? But
Yeah,
you already have badass women. You have Inquisitors and the Sisters of Battle, all right?
Mm.
And they want like, why would you need a female space marine? Like,
Because the Space Marines are popular. Which is
That's
actually kind of
exactly.
weird. Which is actually kind of weird because this people have been wanting plastic sisters of battle for fucking ages, and now they finally.
yeah.
Actually, we're actually
If I
getting
want to
some
play
nice
like an
figures
all-female
on that.
army, I'll play the Sisters of Battle or have females in my Imperial Guard.
Yeah,
Go
it's,
Prevalent.
it's,
I
It's not-
think the best compromise I heard for that is to have for it to both be friendly to the lore and people to more or less have their female space marines is to have Primaris versions of the Sister of Battle, which would make sense considering that falls in line with Gilliman's plans.
yeah, I think that the thing is the idea that the Sisters of Battle are not really comparable. Like, of course, they're not as strong as Space Marines, but they're not like basically already female Space Marines in concept. Is kind because that's what it was. Like, the reason the Sisters of Battle were a thing was because they wanted to have a female version of the Space Marines, which is, you know, and to say that the Sisters of Battle are not fucking badass, right, is really not as badass as Space Marines is really stupid. And I think that's
have you seen the shit they have? This these Sisters of Battle. I
Yeah.
mean,
it's fucking comparable. It's on the same level as Space Marines. It's just that they're female, all right? And they have their own version of like power armor. They have their own version of, you know, fucking bolters and flamers, and it's all the same shit.
they basically have better shit than majority of like the Imperial Guard. Like, their stuff is like equal to like Space Marine stuff.
Yeah,
They're just not
so
genetically modified. Also, do you want to be turned into a space marine? I've
yeah,
seen
I was gonna say, if you know the lore behind Space Marines and this it takes, like, yeah, nah. Like, do you want females to have to go through that? Like, do you really want that to happen?
Hey,
Oh,
equal
you think giving birth is
treatment,
bad?
eh?
Try the Space Marine indoctrination. Like one of them where they peel your skin off.
In reply, yeah, they have to put the black carapace on. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
fucking. You want that? You want? Yeah, that's what I like. Because they don't. It's like the problem is these people don't actually understand the lore and they don't actually understand anything about.
And an
Well,
important
also-
thing
also all the
about the
Primarchs were-
Imperium. Like the important thing about the Imperium is that from the word go, they specifically say in the opening text that it is borderline of fascist society.
It is.
They
It's
say
border. But the thing is it's like that by necessity. It's not like that by choice.
Well, yeah,
it's
I
like
know
that
that,
because
but like,
because there's no other option. Like, you can't be fucking around with democracy when you've got like 50 billion different apocalyptic threats to deal with at once, right?
well, I mean that's just the thing though, because like
The-
they're wondering why there isn't like equality in this setting that is not friendly to equality. They even say that at the beginning.
Real world. Like,
Hmm?
Yeah.
like try chuck people like pedantic romantic into Warhammer 40k. It wouldn't even last 7 seconds.
Oh, what's that? You don't feel like you're you are. Get back to work, fuckwit. Have your
Mark this one as a potential Slaneshi cultist.
Mark this one as a potential cultist. We'll be
Now
paying
I'm
you a
actually
visit.
terrified that pedantic romantic is going to become a demon prince of Slaanesh.
Probably.
Oh man,
But
have
anyway.
you seen the new Demon Prince figures for Age of Sigmar for the Slaneshi Hedonites? Really
I
badass looking. Check that.
Yeah, I've seen some of the older ones where they look like fucking demon dominatrixes, and I'm just kind of like, my heart and brain says no, but my dick says yes.
All right, let's continue. We've got 15 minutes left. Let's go.
That. But this is regression, not progression. Then, with Nado's storyline, it's about not needing to conform to societal norms. She doesn't need to be a man to be taken seriously as a detective. How can you say you have an affinity for this character and ignore something like that? You entirely miss the point of their story. That's outwardly disrespectful to the creator's work, if you ask me. And ironically, in the complete opposite direction, there's the case of Lily from Zombieland Saga. This character is trans. To say otherwise completely ignores, well, you know what I'm going to say at this point. The show makes this clear. She says she wants to be a woman. She lives as a woman. She corrects when you say her old name. She says, I am a woman. Well, every character we discussed in this type of category wants to be referred to as male and refers to themselves as such. She does not. You don't have to use exceptions or want specific instances. To say she sees herself as a woman, it's just her character. People will claim, oh, Japan this or Japan that. Even if I thought there was a meaningful difference, I wouldn't care what Japan does or doesn't consider transgender. That literally doesn't matter. What matters is, does this character see themselves as a woman? That's what's really important to me. How the character is written to see themselves. Like, going back to Ruka, people cling...
Right. So on that Lily point, in the first video, I was not convinced. I was more convinced that they were a trap. And I mentioned that it was up to interpretation, right? However, I have been convinced by Monroe's argument here, because I think that it's a bit, because it ties in line with my definition of trans, which is that they want to be a woman, right? And they have to have that element of them in order for them to be considered trans. So how do you?
Yeah,
guys
and
feel about that?
if you think about it, like Lily didn't live long enough to get that surgery. Like if she didn't die, you know.
Well, fortunately, that's a lot easier to do when you have a necromancer near you.
So I've kind of swayed my opinion on that debacle a little bit, because I was initially way more rap kind of camp, because that was the better arguments, right, at the time, and because Pedantic's arguments was just fucking terrible, and didn't,
As always.
it did not convince me at all.
I haven't watched the show, so I've always kind of withheld.
Yeah, and that's why I was middle, kind of, because I haven't watched the show. I don't have the full kind of like context. I don't particularly care enough to look too much into it. So I have to go off what I'm seeing and the arguments being presented by people like Pedantic and Monroe. And Monroe's argument to me fits my definition. It's a lot better than what Pedantic was offering. So I'm going to now say that I will agree that Lily is trans.
Well, yeah,
So,
it's pretty much easier to, when the argument given by Pedantic was that every trap or everyone who dresses as a female is trans by definition. There's a lot of more resistance to that idea than.
Yeah, well, if you think about like quite a lot of these trap characters, like they don't care if they're male, like they're just like, yeah, I'm a boy, and I like to dress up in pretty clothing. All right, and they're like androgynous. But with like Lily, you see the scene where she's like growing facial hair, and she's like, oh fuck, I won't be cute anymore.
So yeah, that's where I just wanted to make that point, and now we're going to get into some more Steins Gate stuff, which was what Ali was talking about before. But we'll continue.
Ooh, Steins Gate, this is a good one.
He says, "I want to be a woman," ignoring that this is entirely based around his love for Okabe. He corrects people if they say they are a girl. Even when Ruka is born a woman in a different timeline, nothing changes. Ruka is exactly the same, except they are able to be honest about their love for Okabe. And at the end, they admit if they go back to being a boy, they will hide it, and never speak honestly about their feelings. Clearly implying that all of their statements are just because they want to be with Okabe. I've seen it said that, oh, this is because Steins Gate is just anti-LGBT. But Okabe says if Ruka wants to be a woman, they should get sex reassignment surgery, because they could be an LGBT star with their current looks, and everyone would accept them. The author implies this would be a possibility, but Ruka does not want to be a woman. Ruka is not transgender. Ruka wants Okabe, a straight man, to be in love with them. It's their arc. I'm not saying they're a great character, but their character sees themselves as a guy. And I bet that scene is something most who try to say they aren't a guy have no knowledge of. To say that Ruka is trans is basically implying being transgender has nothing to do with dysphoria, or how you see yourself. It's as simple as just wanting to fuck a straight man, but that ain't it, Chief. It's not that Japanese media doesn't have trans women. It does, but you have to actually care to look. Lily is one of those characters. She's just in a very popular show, so of course she's the one people know about. But going back to that, people still claimed it was a trap, or a boy. The same people always acting like they're on the side of the facts and thinking logically. They ignore very basic stuff to say no this time. Which kind of sucks. I don't particularly care if a character is in my camp or not. Like I said, I relate to these characters in deeper meanings than, teehee, they're a guy and dressed like me. Perhaps that's why I care so deeply about people misrepresenting characters, because the stuff I care about is who they are, or I guess more literally, how they are written. A lot of those male characters I mentioned, a core part of their story is being male, proving themselves or escaping something. This is why I relate to them. A lot of people will look at me as less of a man for the way I am, and while that is how I get off in the bedroom, I don't actually see myself as less, so I relate to their struggles. Male characters like Hidari, he's trying
whenever you get to like the part with Ruka, I do want to mention something as well.
Alright, well we've gone past that now, so I will.
And the way
There
I
you
look
go.
is
You
very
can.
much
Oh
me
wait.
carving my own path in a similar
There you go.
manner. Even
No,
Nado, I
stop.
heavily
Who
rely
keeps playing it? There you go. Right, now you can go.
Yeah, I do want to mention that I remember that when you play like Ruka's route in in Steins Gate, when his gender changes to a her, and I do remember that after you changed it back, Ruka gets gender dysphoria because he/she has memories of when they were a boy/girl, and they get very confused about it.
Right. Well,
So that's all.
Time travel.
fucking time travel, am I right, boys?
Yeah, exactly.
Dimension
Like, I just wanna mention
hopping.
that one as well.
Right. Well, yeah, because I think that the main point that Monroe makes is that in the context of, I would say, yeah, in the main thing is that initially it is because of they don't have dysphoria, and it's because, I mean, you could make the argument that they're gay because they are after a straight man, so they're they want to be romantically
I think
interested in
male
a man.
Ruka.
However,
gay.
the question is it right? It's more of a romantic kind of connection than a sexual. So that kind so I'm just saying that the argument that they're gay. However, it probably wouldn't be a super strong, is what I'm saying.
Well, when you do his route and he becomes a female at the end of her route, because female version, like they have she has a child with the main character, So, like, obviously feelings were there.
Right. Okay. 'Cause
Maybe not. Maybe he wasn't gay.
I own the novel, but I haven't actually gotten through it yet because I've just not had the time to play
Yeah,
a actual
like
novel.
that's what I like. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
maybe not. Maybe like slightly bi. I don't know, but like the fact is that like Ruka had feelings for him both as a male when he was male and when he was female. Like
Right.
clearly, there's some sort of like attraction going on there.
Right. Okay. But yeah. So yeah, I think that it's still a strong point though. I think in Monroe's video to bring it up because it is another one of those things where it's like because here's the thing, right? We're talking about it, and obviously the character is way more complex than just lol trans, right? There's clearly more going. There's more going on with this character than just the fact that they dress like a woman and therefore they are trans. There's clearly something else, and I think that's one of the biggest like repeating sort of things we keep seeing is they tend to they take out the context, and two, they strip the character of the other things that make them interesting characters.
Actually,
just to inject their own fun.
Yeah, speaking of like cross dressers, when I was going to tech, there's actually this dude who looks completely masculine, but he's in women's clothing. All right, and I see this person quite often when I go to tech, and I just like I did a double take. I was like, because I saw this person walking by, and I did like a double take. It's just like, oh, I see. There's high heels dress. It's like, oh, I see, and I just continue on with my day. Like it's just kind of like, oh, all right.
My first encounter with somebody like that is when what was it? My sister, when she got one of her cats, she went to her friend's house to pick it up, and her friend was male to female. I remember looking through the rearview mirror, and I tell my brother-in-law, "Oh wow, she's pretty hot," and he's like, "Hey, I don't know what to tell you, but that's transsexual." And I was like, "Did I stutter?"
Spoken as a true degenerate.
Spoken as a true fucking degenerate. Go on.
Any holes?
Hey, who cares if there's only 3 holes instead? If who cares? There's only 2 holes instead of 3.
In the old goal.
Exactly.
Right.
Anyway, like this person, like just looks like a male, can pretty much pass off as a male. Like I'm not confused. I just kind of did like the double take because it's just like, oh, what the, oh, okay, female clothing, dude, got it. You know, continue on my day. You know,
Yeah,
like it's not a big issue.
I think most people don't really care because most people just want to go about their business and not fucking have to deal with bullshit like this. Like we're exceptions. We're exceptions to the rule because we're just fucking bored and have nothing else to do but watch these kinds of videos.
It was just kind of like I haven't I've only seen it like once or twice. I just saw it in like my close proximity, and I was just like, oh, okay, that's a thing.
I've had my own. I've had my own. It's just like, my close friends is now male to female. Well, pretty sure they are. Well, they would refer to themselves as that. But it's like it's just normal now. And I think that the issue is they don't kind of want they want it to still be special. They want it to still be this kind of thing where it's like they get treated with special bloody privilege and shit and whatnot, even though it's like no, that's not the point. You should just fucking integrate into society and just be fucking.
But nothing remains special for long, all right? Like, because eventually someone else is going to come up. You know, not everyone is going to be a special snowflake. Because once there's one special snowflake, then there'll be 2, then 3, then 6, then 12.
All right, let's continue the video and see where we get.
Because her story, though inverse, is similar to the problems I have faced. I hope that didn't seem too far off topic, but I think it sits directly with what I'm trying to say here, with how people just ignore the truth to make their own feelings a reality, whether it has any factual base in it. The types saying trapped is a slur are also the types delegitimizing others' work. It's mine with these people. Which leads me to the final part of this video before my conclusion. I want to avoid directly referencing any videos for this, but perhaps the worst one I watch, ending with a very specific section, offering alternatives to the word trap to use, much like the rest of the video.
Oh yeah, this is gonna be good, Ellie. You're gonna love this.
Really contradictory to what they're saying.
Okay, so I remember when we were doing research and watching a bunch of videos, you had a really unbridled rage for the one that had the Japanese terms in place of trap. Could you just quickly explain for me why that is?
Yeah, no, it was just really stupid. Like, she says Don't say trap, say josu. It means wearing woman and encompasses both trans people and cis cross-dressers. And it's like, if you look at it from her point of view, she's basically saying the same thing. She was saying that trap is being used in English, but now suddenly it's positive. It's the same meaning, just run through a translator back and forth. Literally telling trans people that they're just wearing woman. I mean, it's very obvious to me as a trans woman that I'd be offended to be told that I'm just wearing my gender. Like, the amount of mental gymnastics is just retarded.
The two words they use are otokonoko and josu. Otokonoko is primarily used for boys, and at that, a term more specifically for porn. However, in a similar manner to trap in our culture, otokonoko can and is still used by some trans women.
Okay, so just for recording's sake, you have been living as a school teacher for 2 years now in Japan, and the majority of your transition took place there, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so I know you've already given me some sources, but from your personal experience, how do you perceive otokonoko to be used there?
Well, I've seen otokonoko mostly used in porn, like especially hentai and stuff, but also by feminine guys and trans people. But when I started transitioning, I found blogs that listed themselves as otokonoko alongside other blogs, and most of them gave advice on how to look femme, how to dress femme, but also how to get hormones. It's kind of how I started DIY about a year and a half ago. But since then, I've joined other circles of trans people who'd rather pass or would rather not be known their former identity. So, and they don't use the term for themselves, and they don't seem to like using the term for themselves at all.
See, it's kind of funny because the way you describe it is specifically how I perceive trap to be used here. Like, I'm sure you've seen all those dumb fortune trap guides that end up in how to get hormones and websites to go and do it yourself, all that. Granted, those are awful until you eat semen, so I imagine what you looked at is better. But also in that most trans women
I know what
women
image he's
perceived
talking
as
about.
women kind of hate the term trap, and the only ones I really see use it are kind of wanting to draw attention to themselves. So to me, it's kind of funny because these terms seem to be exactly the same. I'm not really sure if you agree on that.
Yeah, I feel the same, I think. Like, that's how I've seen it.
But yeah, while I have you here, can you also explain how you perceive Josu to be used as well?
So, Joso I think is a lot more clear. I've only really seen it used for cross-dressers and femboys. I think it's much more culturally used because, I mean, it's used for people who just cross-dress for fun, not even like trying to pass, just wearing women's clothing. I've only ever seen trans people use it to refer themselves as having done Joso or having been Joso, and that helped them realize that they actually wanted to transition, that they were actually female. I mean, I think most people would find the word, or most trans people would find the word insulting to use after they've transitioned.
You might just say this is one person's experience, or that.
Alright, I'll stop there. Any comments?
I don't remember what I said last time, but I think I said something to the effect of why this, because it just means the same thing. I need to check the tapes, but
With any information you get about Japan, you always want a double, especially if it's hearsay, you always want a second source, and you always want somebody who has some inside experience. Because if there's one thing, two things on the internet that I have found that people are experts on. People are experts on military warfare, and people are experts on Japan. Everyone. You see the problem with that. Most of that information ain't true.
Yeah, actually, do raise that point. Like, when I was at Tech, basically, to make like a long story short, I am now like assisting these two Japanese girls with their English, like speaking English in exchange for like Japanese lessons. And like I was saying to one of the teachers that's organizing it, like I said to them, was like, I have some experience with like Japanese people, and I know a little bit about their culture and stuff, and I want to learn about the language. So the teacher was like cool with that, but because I've read it in books and stuff. But I also made sure to double check on the internet to make sure that my information was correct, because some of the books I have could be like outdated, or probably not outdated, but I wanted to make sure that I wasn't getting anything wrong.
But yeah, I feel like this is an alright part of the video. I think that, of course, like, getting somebody in, right? Like, people can dismiss it as anecdotal because you're bringing in, like, a singular outside voice, even if they might be in, like, I don't know if it's claimed that the person that's been brought in here is an expert on the subject, so it's unclear, but I am willing to believe it because, again, it is very similar to what Ellie said in the last video, where it's like the terms are just kind of like somewhat the same, but also probably wouldn't really fit into the cultural context of our culture, but fit better into the like you wouldn't use the term trap as the English word trap in exchange for the Japanese word over in Japan, so you probably shouldn't do the same thing.
Yeah, like, because if you did that, they would probably think you're talking about like a bear trap or something, because they have a different word for it.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, let's keep going from here, and we'll see where we get going.
They're not someone who's native to the country. However, as I alluded to in that conversation, this isn't just her opinion. I've been reading articles from native Japanese trans women on their own experience. Here's one such blog post from a male to female trans woman, giving her perspective on
okay. So to answer that question, we do have alternate sources coming in now. So that's so we had evidence from an individual doing an interview, and now we're having a article from a trans person in Japan doing trans stuff.
Yeah, so they're citing this shit, so Pause and Select won't start screeching from the heavens and his eyes glowing red.
Yeah, I was specifically talking about pedantic, how self-assured she was, and those terms, and it's like you can't ever be self-assured. Like, I follow on some level, I've been following since 2010-ish, I believe, ever since the Tokyo Youth Ordinance thing was a thing. I've been following off and on the eccentricities of Japanese law, and it's like you double question your knowledge constantly because there's just shit that it's really complicated. That language barrier is real, and that contextual barrier is real, and I don't think most people who are trying to be, like pedantic, trying to be experts on this fully comprehend it or even have the humility to not be assured in themselves.
Well, I don't even think fucking pedantic did the fucking research or do its due diligence. Like, if they did actual research, they would probably have a more accurate answer, because
but you see, Bio, the research doesn't conform to what I want, so therefore it doesn't exist.
and that's why pedantic sucks.
Yeah.
The only reason I know these things is because I have experience with Japanese people, but I also did my due diligence by reading books and back-checking my facts to make sure that it's accurate.
Yeah, and
I'm citing my shit, and then you'll see a picture of Porden Slick meditating, and all is peace in the world.
And especially in you saw it with how they were arguing on Twitter, how quick they were to just straight up block somebody, and it's like,
they didn't just block. They went onto fucking Twitter protect mode and completely shut off the Twitter.
Oh yeah, I heard about that. That was fucking hilarious. It's like,
it was the
you've
funniest
just proved
shit.
you have nothing of value to say. Like, I don't block people. It's like, yeah, bring it on. Like, if you want to fight, if you want to debate me, bring it on.
Because what basically happened was, because we mentioned it earlier, was Pedantic realized that they were wrong. Clearly, realized that this was not a fight that they were going to win, and decided to just run away. That's what it was. They just ran away with their tail between their legs, right? Because the public perception was. Because I have a feeling that Pedantic... Because what had happened was Pedantic had posted the tweet, and I remember I was right there when it was posted, and it only had 2 replies. Those 2 replies were essentially just circle jerk, going, yes, slay queen, that kind of shit, right? And then for a while, I have a sneaking suspicion that it was like that until Monroe came in. And then that's when the public, the tweets started to get a bit more, break out of the echo chamber a little.
Critical.
And people from outside started coming in and looking at it and assessing it and going, well, hang on a minute here, this is not you're not actually doing a good job here, romantic. And then that's when they went into protect mode, because they were realizing that the public perception was not what they thought it was. They probably assumed
Sunlight
the
is the
public
best
agreed.
killer of bad ideas, because what happened is like Pedantic got like exposed, and its ideas got exposed in the sunlight, and the sunlight just set it on fire. And Pedantic's like, the light, it burns! Scurry, scurry, scurry.
Pretty much. So yeah, let's see what this article.
And it's just want to like, you know.
Oh, yeah. You
touch off
finish.
on something.
You finish your. Continue.
How can anybody who is trying to be an authority on anything say they're an authority, or like how would they be able to interview with people? How would they be able to properly research if they can't handle a Twitter thread being slightly negative, which, you know, whatever, you can always just turn off the damn computer.
You know, that's what I've always said in my IT classes, but also if you've actually got your facts right and you've like cited your sources, like, you have nothing to really fear because you have accurate information.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you can just mute the conversation. It's not.
You know, like
Twitter. Here's the thing, I'm gonna
just
make
turn the
this.
computer off. I just don't care. Like, it's just like...
I'm gonna make this part of my presentation that I'm planning to do for my autism thing about internet safety. Like, Twitter has so many fucking tools you can use. It's not even funny, right? Like, that you can mute threads, you can mute words, you can mute users, you can block people, you can do all kinds of shit so that you don't have to see shit you don't want to see. It's not difficult, right? To be able, like, it's why I find it really weird that people do that whole like star out a word thing on Twitter when they could just mute the word and just not say that. Like, it's not like the tools are there. The problem is people don't use them, and then they complain that Twitter's not doing enough to stop people from saying shit that they don't like, when it's so easy to be able
it's like you're being
Twitter.
attacked in your house. It's like I'm gonna use this allegory. It's like you're being attacked in your house, and you're panicking because you can't defend yourself. But you don't actually, in your panic, you don't notice there's like a gun, like about right in front of you, like a pistol. It's fully loaded, all right, and the intruder's breaking through the door. But in your panic, you forget that there's a gun there. And if you actually remain calm, you can realize it's like, oh wait, I've got this gun. It's fully loaded. All right, let's see if the intruder can take 9mm of bullets.
Yeah.
Let's have at it.
Yeah. So let's continue. We're about a little bit close. We're getting close to the end now. So let's see what this article has to say.
Let's go for the long stretch.
It is in Japanese, obviously, so unless you understand the language, you're gonna have to trust me with this translation. But I have included a link in the description. Summarized, the article states that both Otokonoko and Josu are fun, mostly for cross-dressing, not to be used to refer to someone with gender identity disorder. As some of the information that I've gotten from my friends, to me it's pretty clear that these words are not to be used as an alternative just simply because they are the same as trans, just within a different culture.
Goddamn, pause for a sec.
Used for boys, but some...
Yeah. Bio Gundam, stop moving.
Push to talk.
I'll be back in a second. I'm just eating something.
Alright, stop. Just don't rustle around. Let's continue.
Sorry, I try. It's just like I got memory foam bed, so.
Alright, alright. Let's continue.
To say the other one is better is completely arbitrary and idiotic. The only reasoning is because I said so, and that is not an acceptable reason. So with all that being said, you can come to your own conclusion. You're the one at the end of the day who chooses what words you use. But to me, it really does seem infactual to say that trap by itself is a slur. As we discussed, it was co-opted by trans women by their own choice. A word originally used for feminine guys, and others chose not to use it, while some people both used and saw it as a way to speak in a derogatory fashion to others. Once again, I will never deny that it can be used in a bad way, but it's no different than saying the same person's a man. Man isn't offensive, the use is. I also think it's impossible to deny that some trans women like it and will always use it. There's nothing really wrong with that, I guess, but let's keep in mind, some trans women exist that call themselves faggots, femboys, sissies, and a bunch of other terms that don't mean women. So if you want my opinion, if you're in this group of people, maybe just admit that you like these terms for different reasons, that they have nothing directly to do with being trans. You can like them anyway, that's fine, even if it's fetishistic. As for other groups, maybe just realize that this word isn't solely about you, it never was. And just like if someone thought you were a cross-dresser, you'd correct them. So maybe do the same here. You're not asking for the word cross-dresser to become a slur, are you? Lastly, the entire point of this video is to not let these people have control over you, once you will lie and manipulate the truth, whether it be about words or some character in an anime you jerk off to. So please, whether it's by sharing this video or just taking the information from it, I really don't care. I make these videos not to convince those delusional. They're always going to be delusional and ignore the facts. But the thing is, there are a lot of people who don't know and just think those people are right because that's all they heard. Whether it is a video like this or a controversy to do with games, I just want to get the facts out there. Because I for one am so sick of this idea that we should just accept a certain group's opinions as the facts, even when it's anything but. All I care about is the truth. So that is the end of the video. As always, you can like it physically, support me on YouTube.
Yeah, you can pause.
So now we're at the end. Monroe does mention a few extra little tidbits in this final part, but it's mostly just stuff about like not wanting to start drama and don't go after pedantic and all your typical kind of stuff, right? There's nothing like the arguments have been made. So what do we think?
I don't think it's really worth going after pedantic because pedantic is like low-hanging fruit, like up to your ankles, like low-hanging fruit.
Borderline lol-cow is probably what I'd say, but I suppose that's a little mean.
Yeah, on the video itself, I like it better than starting off with a conclusion, and the little cut towards the Flat Earth documentary. I watched that documentary, it's nice, but I think there is a merit in stating your conclusion at the beginning and then showing how you got there. But indeed, Pedantic's video was stating your conclusion and only providing evidence to support it and disregarding all evidence to the contrary.
I think what you're getting at is the issue is the execution, not the format itself.
Yeah.
Especially with issues like this.
Also, like when I listen to like Pedantic's videos, it's almost like it's talking down to you. Well,
yeah,
that's that's the vibe that I've always gotten.
Yeah, in Monroe's video, it's very clear that it's not like it's more trying to be informative, like they mentioned at the end, rather than try and be convincing to someone that is already deluded or trying to convince people one way or the other. It's more, here is the information, here is my conclusions based off that information and how I got to those conclusions via that information and so on and so forth. So I think it's a really good video. Not just because I agree with it, but because other than the subtitle critique that Lolly had at the very beginning with the footage being used, which I agree with, other than that, I think it's pretty solid. Like, the editing's pretty decent, the audio's pretty good, cuts and transitions are really well done. It's a good video to watch. And
yeah,
I think it...
I did have some slight issues with some, general word use, like using the word delusional instead of, a little bit nicer, it shows a little more bias than you need to have been shown.
Yeah.
You could be more neutral.
Yeah, I can get that.
Got a little snarky at the beginning. The whole part in the beginning about nothing inherently being personally wrong with somebody being ignorant reminds me of the saying that, of all things, a substitute teacher in my math class, and I think it was Algebra 1 in high school, kind of went over, and in particular, he said that there isn't anything necessarily wrong with ignorance because it's not the fault of the person. They can be taught. You can be taught to not be ignorant, if that makes sense.
Well, if you think about the saying, like, ignorance is bliss, like, it's because because you're scared, alright? Because you have a wider understanding of things.
Yeah. And this is kind of why I kind of hate when people are really snarky to people who are outsiders, or just kind of assholes or people who are outsiders and genuinely curious. It's that You know, they're walking into this situation. They, especially with the honeypot dev, he's fucking an old fag from fucking 4chan. Like he probably doesn't understand the Twitter politics behind the word trap. So he was just fucking going in like, oh hey, here's this fucking fat bit. Have fun, my friends. And he's just kind of attacked like that, and it's really disgusting. It's like I'm not dehumanizing enough to think that the ends justify the means at any point. I think that that's probably the worst route you could go down for any type of social initiative. I think history has shown us that dehumanizing people to the point that we view them as like obstacles is very dangerous. I think the direction we're going as a society is showing just how dangerous that is. But
Well, I'm just seeing the world is like the current political structure of the world is a fucking shit show, and I'm just wondering like, what the fuck is gonna happen in like 5 to 20 years time? Like, what is gonna happen?